That's when I said, creator, I barely know her.
God. Holy shit. For everyone in the like watching this, I don't think any of you know.
Let me just run the audio over
that's
here.
my joke. This is the joke I tell everybody at all times whenever there's any ER or anything.
All right, that's the show.
That's it. That's roll credits.
Please let me have like a
God.
like Lorem Ipsum like credit.
Yeah,
so you can
Jesus.
just play over this.
God. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. We haven't done an episode in a while because I packed up all of our stuff for Hurricane Idalia, and now it's been probably a whole month.
What are you doing? These people aren't privy to our lives. They're not paying the Patreon exclusive tier. They want to know these things about us. They should give us money.
We saw The Creator. It was fucking great.
It's my movie. It's mine. Belongs to me. I bought the tickets. I wanted to see it. You guys didn't even know you wanted to see it. I wanted to see it. I've been wanting to see it since the first time I saw it.
It's just the first time you saw it?
Yeah.
Something that I found really interesting going into this is apparently that this movie has kind of been entrenched in the SAG-AFTRA strike.
Yeah.
Because...
Also, real fast, we did it, guys.
Yeah,
Me
they did it.
Donating a small sum of money to a charity did it.
Exactly.
And now the writers have all the resources they need.
And now the writers can breathe easy for 3 years.
And this is funny.
Yeah.
No, this is the SAG-AFTRA strike is a microcosm for this movie.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
Like, this is actually a thing, is that not only that we'll get into it deeper, but Garreth Edwards made this movie for like 80 million, which is, for how good it looks, is impossible.
Yeah.
But specifically, this movie is so entrenched in the SAG-AFTRA strike because the first trailer came out 3 days after the SAG-AFTRA strike was announced. And the movie has a lot about AI in it, which is kind of the point of the strike. More or less, there were parts of it that were about the AI stuff. And then the SAG-AFTRA strike ended 1 day after the movie was released. So you can track the entire SAG-AFTRA strike from the first trailer to the release date of this movie. And it kind of does have a lot of those elements of like AI and humans.
AI is forcing people out. And to be clear, AI is like such a small sliver of the problem for the SAG-AFTRA strike. The real SAG-AFTRA strike's core problem was that these studios were not paying any sort of residuals because of the way streaming works.
Yeah.
And the point here was not, oh no, AI bad. The point here was, these people do not care about the people who actually make the things happen. And they get like, we're going to get so into that in the movie. But like, yeah, that's exactly it. It's just good.
And especially that the movie, I think, and why it's made for me, Cameron, it's made for me, is because a lot of it has to do with the innocence of like creation. And so you create something, it doesn't mean that it actually needs to do something. Like robots, more or less, have a purpose when they're created. Like you do this, you spread butter, whatever.
Yeah, you are a garbage can bomb.
Yeah,
suicide bomber.
Oh my god, dude,
that was so
good.
macabre.
It was very good. But primarily those elements of like, okay, you have a robot that is just created, and it is an innocent in a way, and so you ascribing something onto it is part of the problem. And same thing for a lot of the way that we use AI is like, okay, it's just a tool, but is this tool created out of something that is, you know, stealing art from other people and then basically getting rid of their jobs? So that's the interesting part about like how they both kind of meet, both the strike and this movie. But something else that I found very interesting, and why I think you'll find this very interesting, is that Garreth Edwards, the guy that made this movie, he made Rogue One. I think he made Godzilla also, but he worked with a cinematographer that you might know, named Greg Fraser, who did Dune. Yeah. So there's a Dune tie-in, but I found
No, I was going to do the Dune tie-in. This is mine. But
you stole my I barely know her joke.
Franz Drescher, but Larry and Jihad against the AI.
The Franz Dreschian Jihad?
Yeah, Franz Dreschian Jihad against the AI.
Okay.
And also, this movie made me think maybe Larry and Jihad actually isn't a good thing.
Yeah, because robots are kind of cool if you think about it.
It's like, I want to be clear, the robot part is just the shell. The AI is the core of it. The fact that they're creating these synthetic entities that feel sometimes more human than actual people, even when they have no human features. There's like, we're going to talk about, there's like a scene where you literally see a machine act more human than any of the humans you've seen in the movie, and it's so perfect.
That's just what I love about any of these movies. And Garreth Edwards explicitly said this movie cribs from so many other things. Like he said, I think it was like Akira and Apocalypse Now.
Really? Akira. Cyberpunk future dystopian Akira. Oh, wow. Someone stopped the presses.
Yep.
That there's someone finally used an Akira reference in a film.
But then again, like Blade Runner, of course. I mean, synthetics and stuff like that. And
Harrison Ford was in it.
No, he wasn't.
He's in the background.
He's not in the movie.
He's chasing a replicant?
We might get into it. Why we wouldn't know if he's in the background. Maybe we'll get into that in a second.
Yeah, maybe someone donated his likeness.
Maybe. But also,
his will.
Yeah, there was some kind of Ghost in the Shell looking, like all the cars look like a Tachikoma kind of. It's very interesting.
They don't look like Tachikomas. They just look like future
with
cars.
the legs and such. I could see there being.
They were not spider-like enough for it to be a Tachikoma.
There was a spider thing. It just didn't look like a Tachikoma.
They look like a freaking monsters from Matrix. The robot monster
the Sentinels?
thingies, yes.
Yeah. But the reason why Harrison Ford might be in the movie is because they filmed this whole movie on a Sony FX3, which is like a tiny step above the cameras I have. So it's like a $4,000 camera. It's incredibly great. But the thing that I find incredibly cool about this is that Garreth Edwards started in VFX. So he did a decade of VFX and was afraid to get into the directing space. But now he knows what VFX is like. It was similar with the director of Tron. He actually started in VFX for a long time. I think he even went to Ringling over here.
And everyone knows that Harrison Ford is just VFX. He's been VFX ever since George Lucas invented VFX with Industrial Light and Magic.
Well, you saw the last Indiana Jones movie.
Yeah, I did see the last Indiana. He's just a VFX. Now I understand the reference you're making.
Exactly. His middle name is Industrial Light and Magic. God. Stupid. But the reason why the cameras, Jesus, Cameron,
Harrison Industrial Light and Magic Ford.
His name does sound fake, like Harrison Ford. Yeah. God. Okay.
Get it together, Cameron.
You good? But the reason why the camera is very interesting is that apparently Garreth Edwards went to Regency, the company that made this, which I think is owned by Disney, and basically said, hey, I want to make this movie, and had like concept art in hand. And they're like, that will cost $300 million. We're not giving you $300 million. He's like, no. And so he showed them,
right on Bob Iger's mouth.
Yeah, exactly. And was like, no. I have had so much like background in VFX. This is exactly how I'll do it. And he laid out how the entire thing would go. And the reason why anybody could be in the background is because they would run and gun with 4 people. It literally was like a guerrilla style filmmaking. So some of the shots where they're on a beach is them on a beach. They didn't close down the beach. So in the background, you might see people just like milling about, but they're so out of focus that you don't need to get a release, I assume. I don't know. Garreth Edwards, you might want to Google it.
If you can't see your likeness,
yeah.
If no one actually knows you're there, then you're fine.
Yeah. So Harrison Ford would have had a good dinner back there.
That's why you can blur faces on TV.
Yeah.
It's the equivalent. When they're out of focus, they're effectively blurred faces. You can't get that back.
Exactly. So
unless you have good AI.
Whoa!
That's the metaphor of the thing.
There's AI in this film, everyone. I don't know if you've gathered that.
I didn't catch that part. I thought they were just cool robots.
Also fair.
And a garbage can. It was a very sad garbage can.
God, this movie's so fucking
freaking
good.
Oscar the Grouch in 2077.
That better be in the honest trailer for this movie. Is Oscar the Grouch is one of the trash can robots.
Oscar 2D2.
Oh shit, that's actually pretty good.
All right.
But yeah,
I have good jokes sometimes.
You know, I am genuinely surprised that you had a good joke.
All right, thank you.
I don't know if this actually is true, but it's like kind of perfect for the way that the movie was made, the guerrilla filmmaking style. Is that apparently Garreth Edwards went into a production office and like was looking around and he saw a big poster and it had like the most rudimentary stuff about how a movie is made, where it's like, well, what we do together is we get in a big set and then everybody makes the set and then we have the camera and the camera rolls and then there are people around the set that make sure it looks good. And he's just like, this is like really trivial. Why is this here? And they're like, oh, that's 100-year-old poster.
Yeah, this is the waterfall model of making movies.
Yes. It's like, this is a like so old like version of it. And I think there's like a, heroic backstory idea that Garreth Edwards thought that is like, no, I'll do it different. And so that's kind of where
hire a bunch of gorillas and they'll follow me around and film everything.
Exactly. So yeah, the fact that the way that they filmed it was more intended on like, that seems like a lot of waste, and I want to make something that is so ambitious and different that I really only want a couple of people that I trust to follow me and run around and do exactly what I know will work, instead of this big machine that can pump out some pretty cool stuff, but it's not really pointed in a way because we don't have a vision that we're all
I'm sorry, but that is also a microcosm of exactly why I hate this argument around AI. In that the people who need to be replaced by AI are the studio executives and not the creators. Everything about what you're talking about, this 100-year-old like filmmaking thing, comes from technology that was 100 years old. If you wanted to do Wizard of Oz, you had to make a giant soundstage that had all the things in it, and then you had to make a weird box around your giant monolith of a camera because it was loud as shit. And so there's a bunch of things that, like, a modern camera, like you pointed out, fits in. It's like a block the size of my smartphone. And you can put it on a big old rig to the point where the rig weighs multiple times more than the camera itself. You're getting better image quality. You're able to run and gun much more easily. And thanks to modern visual effects, you're able to make a lot of things happen either practically or using post that you never could have done before. Before, it was like you had to build the set because once the film is made, it is done. All you can do now is edit. So the idea that, like, if you have a person with vision, you can do almost everything practically and then just add a few touches later. It goes to the point that's like studio executives have learned all the wrong lessons. They have learned, like, oh, we can do whatever we want in post. We can completely redo the entire movie in post and give it a completely different message and make sure it works for Chinese audiences and all the other crap. That is the wrong lesson. Every single person who makes a costume come to life, every single person who makes the audio come to life, every person who makes the visuals come to life, every actor, these are the people who do not need to be replaced with AI because they are doing the actual hard work of making the film. I'm pretty sure, like, if you look at Warner Brothers, like, directors, if you look at the Disney board of directors, every one of them is getting paid a movie budget every year in salary. If you replace them, you get an extra movie every year. That's probably better.
The fact that a lot of that, like the stuff that they're unlearning because of this entire big system, I find so great when you see something like this, like them running and gunning, and you have the people at the bottom just doing the stuff. Especially that this was made by, like, Regency or whatever. It wasn't made by, like, the big name that you would see. It reminds me of when we went and saw the movie Talk to Me. And the beginning of the movie was like 8 different production houses that all had to come together to make this movie happen. And it's probably one of the best, like, horror movies I've seen, because there was an idea, and the idea works so well with other things that when you have this, when you have, like, A24 or whoever behind you that are like, no, that's good. Let's do it. Here's the money.
Here's your vision. Here's
enjoy.
the money. Here's
Let's win another goddamn Oscar.
Well, that's the other thing is, like, it's all practical. I don't remember a single thing in that movie. I'm sure there was some stuff where they added or removed.
In Talk to Me?
Where they added or removed CGI. But like, it's all like, you can just tell a good story and have it be all practical. Like, this is why Wes Anderson is amazing. All of his sets, everything he does is usually just like what's in camera. He can add stuff in post, but like just that weird art house look is what makes him so endearing as like a big time director who's often making a lot of movies where the vast majority of the cost is the actors, not anything having to do with his wardrobe or his like actual like creation process.
But yeah, so that they filmed this whole thing pretty run and gun style. So apparently certain days there was just 4 people with a camera. And so there's some really cool behind the scenes of just the camera, like this tiny little box camera that's on like a big like stabilizer, and they're just running on a beach, and that's it. That's the whole shot. And something that I hope that more films are getting into is this film had a direct vision. Bro knew exactly what he was doing from the outset. So the other part that makes this so interesting to me is that not only he came to them with in hand concept photos, I want to do all this. Apparently he has some concept artists as friends that were like, yeah, let's make a weekend out of this. They do that. He films and knows more or less what he's going for with a shot list. And then they edited and had picture lock really quickly. They basically had the movie ready at about like, the movie runtime is 2 hours and 13 minutes. They more or less had the movie ready with all of the footage, picture locked it because they're like, this is what I wanted, and then did all the VFX. They didn't have to do the Marvel thing of like, well, we don't really know what this costume's going to look like, so let's just have the VFX artists make 20 of them, and we'll pick one later, you know?
There's also a lot fewer hands in the pie, so you don't have an executive showing up at the last minute. It's like, spend $5 million to make the collar slightly larger.
Yes, exactly.
Like, it's literally, like, this is the stupidest thing about modern Hollywood is, like, you guys are just burning money, overworking people for no reason.
Yeah.
Like this is kind of like that James Cameron effect, right? Like he knows how to do all the things he wants.
Yeah.
So he can like not waste any time trying to like dig out all these like, oh, we're gonna do it this way and then previs this, but then we're gonna change it in post because of this. Like, no, I know where I want it to be. In the same way that Mad Max was created all storyboard.
Yeah.
This is an example of like you can just have a movie that is vibes and still like feel hit way above its weight class.
Yeah, because I love how vibes it is. Like it's like Tron, where it's like I don't care if this doesn't make complete sense.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
Why
I don't
is there
give a
butterfly
fuck.
in her code, and that also makes her an ISO.
Yeah.
And, is she like a bootloader for a Windows operating system?
Disney just give these visionary directors just some money and let them make stuff only I want to see.
Yeah,
because that was Tron. That's this, but especially that like the giant sky like drone thing base. It shoots down a giant crosshair. Like it's so visually distinct, but like hilariously stupid. Like if you think about, they're doing like a covert mission. You just see this giant sky laser come down, as well as one of the first scenes in the movie is them doing this covert mission, and they have like neon on their like covert goggles, and you
like
can see them a mile away.
Yeah, they look like they're just running around like Ghost in the Shell gear.
Yes, 100%.
On a like tropical beach. Like it doesn't matter what you're wearing on that beach.
God, it's so funny because but that's what I mean. Like to the viewer, you're like, this is rad as fuck. But if to anybody with any tactical experience, it's probably like, that's really dumb. And like SOCOM have done it way better like a decade, 2 decades ago. And this movie takes place in like 2065 or something like that.
Yeah, it takes place like, I think it's 50 years in the future, where they have big dubstep tanks and a dubstep aircraft carrier and dubstep.
That's what I mean. Just, it looks cool. You could tell somebody knew what they wanted out of this thing. And I find it so interesting, like all of the visual language, because you'd think that a lot of it would be, okay, well, here, this entire scene will be CG. They shot this thing on location, most of it. Very little times did they use a green screen or the volume or whatever to shoot like LED wall in the background. A lot of it was shot in Bangkok, Thailand, or like areas of Thailand. And they shot at 80 locations. You don't get that shit now. Like movies don't do that. They like specifically pick certain places. Right now, actually, Jess, my girlfriend, and I are watching through One Piece. And the entire time we're watching through like the anime, we just finished the Netflix show. I'm like, wow, this place goes way more, like this anime goes way more places.
They go to a snowy mountain where they meet a reindeer.
Yeah, God. But like there's so much more to it because you can draw stuff and you can go places.
Yeah.
Well, the like Netflix adaptation did so much effort on their locations that they only went to a couple locations, but they did it sparingly. I think they did well. This is my quick...
I just like, I don't care about any live action adaptation of like an excellently executed piece of animated content. Animation is as high, if not a higher art form than live action. I will die on this hill, and I don't think we need this, and I don't want to spend too long here because then I'll just get mad.
But that's what I mean is like, as an example, they had to spend like $300 million to make these sets that good enough that I was like, I guess I'll watch the anime. Now that I'm watching the anime, I'm like, this is way better than the adaptation. Yeah, and that this really hammers home something for me that I think we're going to see more, because it was similar with Oppenheimer, that they apparently just got like the lightest IMAX rig they could.
They got the cheapest nuclear bomb they could get on wholesale at the Army surplus store.
Exactly. And they were just running and gunning a lot of the time. And this movie has that energy because they go to 80 locations with like, yeah, a run and gun team being like, okay, are the people in the background out of focus? Cool, we'll keep shooting. And yeah, they didn't have to close down too many locations because they were just shooting with a couple people. It looked like me and a couple people going to film like, I don't know, a music video for like a friend. Not like this kind of budget movie. And the amount of flexibility that type of camera gets you is also that these cameras are so good now. One of the biggest cameras right now for filmmaking, the Arri Alexa, not the LF, but like a regular Arri Alexa that's been in use for decades.
No one watching this knows the difference.
They might. We've covered one. We blew it up in an episode. Link in the bio. Those cameras use like a Super 35 sensor. The camera they were using, which is $4,000 and cheaper, used a full frame sensor, which is like twice the size. So cheaper stuff now has the kind of features you might want for other reasons, in the way that this movie just looked so good, and they could film at such dark locations, because that's the beauty of the A7S III, which we have, and the FX3. is that their low light is stupid good. So they were like, okay, well, we kind of just shoot at moonlight. And that's why a lot of those dark areas are so dimly lit. There's very little lighting besides the freaking neon on their, tactical helmets.
But that's also a testament to okay, think about Pacific Rim versus Pacific Rim Uprising. Think about the Lord of the Rings trilogy versus the Hobbit trilogy.
Sure.
When you have that visual language locked in, when you've spent all that time, I know what I want these shots to look like. Every part of this movie feels so the world feels so rich because it's literally just places. It's not like we had to completely manufacture Rivendell from the ground up and make it feel like places. And even then, you see the difference in if you're looking at the Hobbit movies versus the Lord of the Rings, the miniatures and all those little pieces still the bigatures because they're huge. They feel so much better than all these weird CGI shots they put in The Hobbit because the intentionality and how well that matches to the vision of the movie. And that's the point of you can make a dirt cheap movie and still $80 million isn't dirt cheap.
Yeah, no.
But you can
For
make
Hollywood, it kind of is.
The question is how much of that was just actors, because there's some big names in here.
Yeah.
And they use them very well.
I agree. And especially that, speaking of those locations, one of them was and I don't know how much I trust the story that I heard, but one of them was a large hadron collider, and that's where they do the entire extraction near the beginning of the movie. And while they're doing it, apparently Garreth Edwards was oh, this kind of fits the vibe perfectly, but I don't know if they'll let me film there. And then they asked them, and they're like, well, can we be in the movie? And they're like, yeah, sure. They're like, cool, yeah, you could film here, who cares? And
We're all gonna get shot.
Yeah, exactly. It's great. It's the locations that they do pick fit so well with what they're doing, and I can only imagine that the concept art doesn't perfectly mimic it, but the way that they make it work makes so much sense for the dude's abilities, and VFX in mind. And especially that Industrial Light and Magic did do a lot of the robot designs for people. But frankly, if you have people in a bald cap and you CG out their ears, I feel like this is a pretty good way that you can make people look robotic without actually having to green screen, have a big green screen thing and paint on their heads. Similarly to Ex Machina, where they used it very sparingly to be okay, well, we can make her look like a robot in a way that is not prohibitively expensive.
But that's also, Ex Machina is also an example of why Creator worked so well. It's that was a very intentional movie. They shot it in one hotel.
Exactly, yeah.
And so that's you don't need to constantly pay for new sets. The place is already the vibe. When you have a place that's the vibe, even if it's not exactly your weird robot workshop, the vibe sells it enough that you don't need, your imagination fills in the blanks. A lot of the places they shot are just places that they used some atmospheric occlusion and just made it look like there's a big tower in the background. So it feels cyberpunk. And then the Ghost in the Shell music starts playing.
Hell yeah. The two other things I wanted to mention regarding kind of the look, and there are some fun Easter eggs, was one, the giant thing in the sky that's in all of the trailers and stuff like that is called NOMAD. And the thing I find interesting is that there's a Star Trek episode called, I think it's called Changeling, and it's about a giant space thing that's hunting for the creator, and it's called NOMAD, which is kind of fun. That's basically the premise of this movie in a sentence. So a thing called NOMAD looking for the creator.
That's a deep pull. That's a deep cut.
Isn't that weird?
That's for me and two other people.
And the one other thing I wanted to say before we get into spoilers is that the name that they have for the creator is Neaderthals. And immediately, as soon as I heard that, and I told Jess about it, I'm like, yeah, the word for creator is Neaderthals. And she's like Nier Automata. She loves Nier Automata. And so or any Yoko Taro stuff. So I was like,
that's a blindfolded lolly running around with a sword.
Well, the thing that I find crazy is that game specifically is about all of these kind of
AIs,
ideas about AI and what makes a human and what makes an AI and what is personhood, So, God, it was one of those cuts that I'm just like, did y'all knew this? So many of these things all work together in such a good way that I think the plot is so, there's so many callbacks that just feel so good. The movie has such a quick pace and is constantly moving to the point where I'm like, is there going to be a sequel? Are we wrapping it up? Oh no, there's still more. Oh, there's way more of this movie.
That's the nice thing is it's not like when you have Rogue One where it's just we don't have time to breathe and take in what's happening.
Sure.
Because we don't have a previous set visual language of how this world's supposed to work. So here you have, all right, things are happening, and it adds to the urgency of like these people are being hunted.
Yeah.
Things are constantly happening. They don't have time to grieve because these people do not care about how they feel. And that helps, like, again, when you think it out, the pacing and editing mix well with the thing that you were trying to create in the first place, and you just have a continuous, perfect, concise thing.
And the last Easter egg that I want to mention is that at one point, and we're not going to spoil what happens, but they go to an airport, and one of the locations that you could fly to in the airport is SAG-AFTRA, which was in Rogue One. It's a cute little Easter egg because Garreth Edwards made Rogue One. So shall we spoilers?
Yes.
Spoilers. So
We got to get a rainbow animation for that.
We do. I need a better animation for that.
Find me someone on Fiverr. I'll throw money at him.
Animator, I barely know her.
No, we already did that. We set it up.
I at
the
least
beginning.
get one. It's my thing.
I don't care.
Okay.
You didn't let me have my Dune thing.
Yeah, exactly. See? So yeah, welcome to the spoiler part. This movie was so fucking good. My God. Explicitly, it starts out with just kind of the visual language of all the designs and stuff. It reminds me of, I wish I knew the type of style this is, but it's very like serify Japanese like fonts and stuff like that make up, like, it looks like something that's kind of simple has way more words in it, you know?
It's objectively like every cyberpunk movie starting from like the live action Ghost in the Shell, if they had done it right the first time.
Sure. Yeah.
Like I think the way I felt about it is, if you go back and watch like Ghost in the Shell or Akira, those old like cyberpunky animes, they have that kind of like tint to them.
Yeah.
And they somehow managed to bring that to live action in this film in a way that made it feel that kind of like, not nostalgic, but like older vibe. Like it helps you feel exactly on the same wavelength as the original Ghost in the Shell like animated movie. And I think that it was very intentional.
Like kind of grungy and messy, but still futuristic.
Yeah, it's almost like you're looking through a film of dust.
Yes.
Because the world is so, to us, like all this technology is brand spanking new, and you see the Boston Dynamics robot. It's a polished robot with a gun on it that's now monitoring your shopping mall. But like this is like a world where like this technology is so, is that Futurama thing you always like to bring up. It's so old, it's commonplace to the point where like it literally is dusty. Like it just has this film of having been around so long. And what's also nice is how they use that visual style plays into when you are in the more industrialized area, that patina of dust feels much thicker and more present. The more closer to people, the more closer you are to these like big mindless entities who do not care about you, the more that patina is there. And then when you go to like that shrine in Nepal where they're keeping her, or when you're going to like more of the places where you're actually with the robots and it's supposed to be more human, more like this is like the actual human spirit, that patina is much less.
Yeah, I agree. And it has more character.
Yeah.
It, right.
Like the polish on the dome of that like mountaintop retreat is clearer and cleaner than anything. And has more like life and vibrance to it than any of the human places or Nomad.
Yeah. And I was surprised how much the trailer kind of primes your brain for this. But there's a lot of locations that they just kind of throw in the trailer that you think will be more or less significant, and then in the movie it's completely different.
Yeah, they just like run past it.
Yeah, seriously. And that's another thing that I love about the fact that they could have 80 locations, is that similarly to Star Wars, and apparently why like everybody was so blown away with Star Wars versus like 2001: A Space Odyssey, is that like most of the movies back in the day would linger on matte paintings and be like, wow, isn't this beautiful? Especially 2001. It's like so slow. Star Wars was like, okay, you saw it? Good, moving on. Like as if it was, they were like filming a documentary and had to get from point A to point B. It's a quick thing. This movie has that energy of like, here, this is rad, but we got other stuff to do. Like this looks cool, but we got to keep going. And there are some cool sweeping like concept art looking shots. But as we're globetrotting, I was I really have a problem with pacing in modern cinema. Yeah. Like I just feel like too many movies are too fast. This one was fast in a way that I love, which is similar to like Parasite, where the movie knows where it's going and it's just like, cool, it's stringing you along and be like, no, come on, there's cool shit we're going to get to. It's not like we're going fast, so maybe we can get to something interesting. It's like, no, the next thing's cool. We're getting there. Come on, you're primed for it. It's about to happen. So this movie had so much good intention to it that I was like, feels good. Feels good to watch.
And for anyone who doesn't know, the entire plot of the film centers around, all right, it's the future. We have Franz Drescher has convinced us AI bad.
Yeah.
So now we're just actively trying to destroy AI.
Mm-hmm.
And it's claimed that, first of all, I think the funniest, like the one thing about this movie that rang very hollow for me is that the inciting incident against the AI is that they nuked Los Angeles.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit about Los Angeles. That's my one cuss for this episode. Like, I think that was the one funny thing to me is like the only place we ever see in the United States other than this like weird retreat that he's at is Los Angeles. And it's like, I could not care less.
Mm-hmm.
I'll nuke Los Angeles for you.
Jesus. Cameron does not actually mean that.
In Minecraft. In Minecraft. I'll nuke Los Angeles in Minecraft.
But okay. I'm gonna be honest right now in the fact that I really fucking hate a lot of the reviews I saw for this movie because they were like, it's kind of cool. But they were like, it's kind of cool, but I don't think it has much to say. And I'm like, what are you talking? I think distinctly there was an IGN review that was like, give it like a 7 out of 10 and was like, it's pretty cool looking, but I don't think it has much to say. And I'm like, bro,
you convinced me none of these reviews matter.
Yeah, seriously, because not only does it have so much to say about it's very blatant how much they're just like, AI is very similar to people and we're, scanning people's brains. So the fact that the main character is like, what are you talking about? We can just turn them off. They're fucking robots. It doesn't really matter. And that alone could fill up an entire movie.
And several Star Trek episodes.
Yes. But okay, guys, this isn't me being glib. This isn't me being mean. This movie does a 9/11. Like, it's about that. It's about the post-America world after 9/11.
Yeah.
Like, the post-9/11 world.
Like
very blatant.
Yeah, the visual language of them nuking Los Angeles is exactly like a second nuke has hit the Los Angeles.
Like, deliberately, they have like a general talking about it afterwards and saying basically the same stuff that George Bush
that's
said.
the best thing, though, is like the way the general, like it's just like when George Lucas was popping off about like, this is about the Iraq War. The prequel trilogy is about the Iraq War.
God.
It's exactly that. You go from a tragedy to seeing opportunistic people doing exactly what opportunistic people are going to do when they're given such a beautiful thing on a silver platter. And the best part is, you later find out they don't it's not clear. That's like the beauty of this is like this movie is so entrenched in like these guys say this and these guys say that.
Yeah.
That at some point the robots literally tell John David Washington's the name of the actor.
Joshua.
They like literally tell him it was a coding error. The nuke on Los Angeles wasn't even like AIs didn't do this.
It was a person that a human being that
human
made the
error caused this, and they turned it into an opportunity to fearmonger against something that was is now completely divergent. And there's like something to be said there about like what would AI look like if I had continued unimpeded in this like weird world where America's super good at being the worst. Also, it's drenched in that like America does not care about borders. Like the NOMAD is truly everywhere. Like I think you pointed this out to me. I didn't even appreciate it until you pointed it out to me after the movie. Like it's a predator drone.
It is.
It's just always in the sky.
It's the perfect symbol for it because God, the fact that it has a giant crosshair is that, from the ground you can see the crosshair, but it only matters to the person literally up there looking down that this is a crosshair we're gonna on the planet. But also the fact that the predator drones, like literally it's up there making giant like dubstep noises that everybody below it can hear. And similarly that there is a huge problem around the world of people having PTSD just from hearing predator drones. Like it's an omnipresent fear that if they hear that or something that sounds like it, like a lawnmower, they get scared because that's what it is. They could be bombed any second.
Pretty much anyone east of Turkey has some sense of PTSD just on a clear, sunny day. Because like kids hate clear, sunny days because those are the days predator drones are like the most functional. Jesus. A cloudy, stormy day is the only day you can feel safe outside because it means that they can't see you very well, if at all.
And I know we're getting into like deep topics, but that's what I find interesting about this movie is that if you don't already know some of these things, then you can let it go by and be like, wow, that's a fucked up thing. When looking at it, it's like it's all text. There's very little subtext. It's like, no, if you know what we're talking about, this is about America's foreign policy, bro. Like it's here.
They literally are just going to sovereign Asian countries and nuking them and bombing them and doing horrible things to like. That's my other favorite thing about this movie is like there's no ambiguity about how often every one of these strikes results in civilian innocent people dying. There's I think most of the movie up until like the third act is the same, which is like he finds the robot, he's trying to use the robot to find his wife who he's pretty sure exists because they lied to him. They lied to him to go and invade another country so that they could get this weapon of mass destruction that doesn't actually exist because it's not actually doing that. And at the same time, the kid's like just following along because it's either that or he gets killed.
Sure.
And the entire time they're running, you're going through these different vignettes of the places where the robot resistance is. And every single time you see the robots, they are acting as or more human than people. Like there's robots like doing story time for children. There are robots doing like helping people like walk around. There's even people helping robots walk around in some shots to show like there's this symbiosis. But the like one perfect moment is during one of the raids. It's clear like the NOMAD's like targeting system is the same as like all the US military's targeting system. So there's one where like the dubstep tank is locked onto the guy, and the guy's a robot. He's entirely robotic. There's no thing about him that is human except for the fact that he has 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head.
Yeah.
And he's trying to
He's
run.
got like a mantis face.
Yeah,
Like he
and
looks
he's
very
trying
not
to
human.
run to cover.
Yeah.
And he sees the cover he's about to run into has like an old woman and like some children in it.
Yeah.
He in the most human scene in this entire movie, despite how many human scenes there are. This thing that looks nothing like a human, with none of the facial expressions of a human. You can see it make the mental calculations of like accepting its fate to save other people right in front of you. And like this, like it's like a 5-second scene and it's perfectly acted by a piece of metal.
It's man, and that's why I think that this movie is very similar to like Apocalypse Now, Heart of Darkness, the book. That like it's the main character seeing all of these things and their brain changing. Like they start the movie with this like, what are you talking about? It's just a bucket of balls.
He's literally super deep cover to the point where we later find out the person he has impregnated, who is his wife, is actually the person he's been hunting the whole time.
Yeah, and that spoilers, the whole thing of the movie. Which man, like literally I turned over to Cameron in the middle of the movie, was just like, wow, who do you think Nirmata is? I wonder who Nirmata is.
That was my favorite part, because then you're always like, I don't like it unless the movie tells like, they haven't told us yet. So how on earth can we possibly know?
But I love that. I love when they lay like so many clues that you're like, okay, once it gets there, it's fine. But that even though you're like, okay, well, I think by now we know who the fuck Nirmata is. When you finally see her, you're like, oh, okay, well, there's a bigger reveal there too. But also that she's pregnant. And then 5 years later, we see a little child robot. I wonder what the child robot is. You know, it's very simple and easy storytelling and symbolism. And that's not the point of the movie, of course, is not these specific symbols and the reasons for you to be like, oh, I wonder what the next big reveal is. It's more of like, we are following this character who is changing and understanding that robots are people too, especially that in the very, very beginning, he's cleaning up the disaster that was in Los Angeles, and a robot wakes up and is just like, oh my God, where are the humans I was with? I need to make sure that they're okay. And then he like, he immediately like cuts it. Yeah. Like,
and the woman he's with is like freaking out because she's like, no, that wasn't a robot. That was like a person. Just to give you a sense of like how much distance has been put between the people in the United States who are being told that AI is a monster that should not be like allowed to exist, versus a woman who's faced with the reality is like, this thing is as empathetic as any person she knows. And it was horrifying for her, even though it was an incredibly brief interaction.
And especially for him, he has like an actual decent reason to distrust them, because he's been fed the narrative that Los Angeles was because of robots, so you should hate robots. And who was killed in that bombing but his like everyone in his family? He has no one else. And so for him to have this resentment is very understandable. And that he starts off there, and then later on, he's like murking all of these robots, has no care in the world for them, meets the little kid. And even though the little kid's a robot, he's treating it with he's starting to treat it with more empathy that he would to an actual child. When it starts crying or freaking out, he's like, no, it's fine. It's okay. And then, when another robot tries to hurt him, he's like, no, it's just off. He's like thinking about the child's mental well-being, and then is met with the reality that like, this is a robot that had the child's like well-being at heart, and is like, okay, I'll get rid of these people that are probably going to hurt you eventually. He kills the robot and then says, don't worry, the robot's just off. It's okay. And then his friend dies, and the kid says, he's off, right? Yeah. It's just like, the kid's learning. The kid understands what's going on and is trying to like, there are elements of that are teaching him is like, we're the same. It's very similar. And these things are more empathetic than you might be.
Yeah, I think the thing is like, to us, we treat like, there's a difference between like a Roomba and a sentient Roomba. Like there's a thing that is, when you turn it on and off, there's no daylight between the moment you turned it on off and then back on again. It does exactly the same thing. Whereas like this is a conscient, sentient thing. And so, yes, you can turn it off.
Yeah.
The same way you can like not. That's the thing is like I consider like when they turn the robots off similar to putting like a person into like a coma or unconsciousness.
Yeah.
Where it's like, yes, the person is not responsive and it's horrifying.
Yeah,
And so
exactly.
if you, and that's the other thing is like, this is a machine that is given the ability to consent and it is not consenting to this behavior. It doesn't matter if it can be turned back on just as easily. It is not consenting to this behavior.
Exactly. And how much of it is you're slowly thinking about like, oh, well, how are the robots similar to people? And it's one of those things that like so many comments that I saw were just like, well, why would a robot have this or that? It's like, because it's meant to be a symbol for a person, dude. Like that's why they did it. I know they have a big old hole in their head, but they're meant to show that similarity. And God, man, that some of the acting in this is just so good that not only the people are playing as a robot, but a robot with humanity. So you have these layers. One in particular that I really loved was this police chief or something that's following them and trying to track them down. And at one point he gets murked, and then they put the brain of someone that was recently deceased into him. So the actor is acting as a robot that is also a guy that just died. So they only have so much time to talk to him. And he's trying to get out that like, oh, tell my wife I love her. But they're like, no, we need information. We don't care.
Yeah.
And so
like
he doesn't even get to say it.
Just to be clear, so they have a technology. It's implied in this movie that you can donate your likeness to make like give AIs personalities. And it's not just like your physical likeness. It's also, it's implied to be your brain scan. Like they can scan your brain and use that to map an idea of like what an AI with that personality would look like. On its face, like it's presented as like this. It becomes a Black Mirror episode where it's like on its face, it's like very benign and like, oh, this is like a nice way to make the machines feel more human. Throughout the movie, you see these different macabre ways where they're like, it's not just that they take this guy's brain scan after he's been brain dead. So he's like, even the brain that you're about to turn on is not working properly. So it's literally implied you're going to torture a person just to get information. And they're doing that consciously. But later, they literally try to take, like they have the wife's brain scan. It's like they're going to take this and torture it to get all the information they can about the weapon and make sure that like the weapon can never be, like it's implied like even though this woman is in a coma and probably dead, her suffering has not ended because of the nature of the technology and the people that are after her.
I really recommend, if these things are interesting to you, to play the game Soma. Have you ever played Soma? God, dude, that it's so good with the way that it explores a lot of these in more detailed ways. But I love that it pays lip service to a lot of those, like you said. Like it shows how kind of disturbing all of these things are when you think about what a person is and how we can kind of mutilate that once we ascribe it no like actual moral value, right? Another moment that I thought was really interesting is that this character that's it's very Aliens-esque where they're going around like killing people in the like hoorah, and this one lady is like trying to convince Joshua to help and says like, you know what happened to the Neanderthals? The Neanderthals were kind of cool, but you know, they were basically like very similar to us, but we were the next evolution. We killed them. So if you don't kill these robots, we're the Neanderthals. And in my head, I'm like, that's not what happened.
It's not at all. I hate it when people bring this up because they're like, we raped them, we murdered him, we killed their children.
Elia Martell.
Yes. It's just like, that's not at all like Neanderthals and modern man basically live together. Like Neanderthal DNA very much exists in our world, not because we were horrible murder rapists, but because we just lived in communities. It's implied that Neanderthals died off because they just lived in smaller communities. And so as a result, they either learned to live with modern man, with Homo sapiens. I think that's what we are. Or they just died off because they were just in too small of groups to be able to self-sustain. And like, this is like one of those things where it's like the X-Men do this shit too, where it's like, now the mutants are the humans and we're the Neanderthals. Like, so? Yeah. Like you can have sex with an alien or with a mutant.
I'm glad that's where your brain
Mystique is hot. You're telling me you won't sleep with Mystique? I sleep with Mystique.
And that it's like they evolved together, dog.
Yeah.
It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah,
like,
but
and
also
it shows her single mindedness of like, well, that's how she assumed things happen. And so we all need to be on the defense when in reality, that's not how evolution worked.
But the other big thing is like, because we know, like we almost immediately know that the only reason they showed Joshua like, oh, look, this is your wife. so you should come with us and we'll let you take your wife back. It's like, they know she's not around.
Of course, yeah.
In the same way, like, it makes you think, like, how many other people are doing this because of a lie? They're talking about how her son, like, fell in love with a barmaid who was a machine, and then the barmaid and was going to buy out his contract, and then they, like, murdered him and, like, had fun dissecting him. And I was like, I don't actually know how, like, considering all the machines we meet, none of them are that malevolent. So it doesn't mean that they don't exist, but it's like every part of that story is so macabre that you're like, part of you is like, I don't even know how much of that I'm supposed to believe.
Exactly. Yeah. And then furthermore, the fact that all of the different, man, when he goes and visits his friend and they chides him for having like a quote unquote like robot synthetic girlfriend, and then like you see him like mourning her body, it was like, oh my God, this is so good. Like, oh, it's so good. And just all of these moments of like how much interaction they have with the robots and how they're like, they have a goal and they know what they want to do and they have dreams and aspirations, and most of the human beings don't. They're just following an order.
A clear, like, one of the other clear points of like they really thought about how they wanted this to work was like, so we talked about before the suicide trash cans.
Oh yeah.
They turn on, they act like a person, like, yes sir.
Yeah, it's like, been an honor serving with you.
Yeah, it's like, wait, what is my purpose? You run that way and explode. Oh my God.
Yeah,
it's just that meme.
Yeah.
But then they also have, they could just blow people up and kill people, but instead they have this like grenade launcher that it shoots a grenade at a person, and then it starts like beeping, and then we'll kill them. And it's like, yeah, that's just some stupid sci-fi weapon. But then it has like a perfect moment when the woman who's been chasing them the whole movie is trying to capture the kid and Joshua, the machine, to like show that the machine is not malevolent. It's ambivalent, if not benevolent.
Yeah.
It is like, it uses its ability to control technologies to stop it.
Yeah.
And because of the like continuous blind lust for murdering these machines, the woman dies because the other guys scare they try to kill the kid, and so they scare Joshua, and when Joshua is like grabbing Alfie so he won't get shot, that causes the like signal to break, and then all of a sudden the bomb goes off anyway.
Yeah.
So the woman literally dies because she couldn't find a way to like see the machines as like something to be respected and not just a tool to be used.
Yeah, and like you can see the realization in her head of just like, oh, my hubris, like immediately.
Hubris, God. The folly of man.
Yeah. And man, yeah, there's so many of these good moments, and they jam pack this movie like wall to wall with all of something interesting is always happening. And the moments where there are like a lull just feel like you're like catching your breath for the next cool thing to happen. And in the end, I do feel like the ending was a bit like there was a lot going on all at once, to the point where you're like, okay, where are we?
That felt very wish fulfillment-y.
Where it's like everything's tying up a little too cleanly, but not in a bad way. Like, I think that this whole movie has so many of these blatant images that's like, this is a fairy tale, right? Like, we all get that this is a story about AI and that these are all symbols for things. These aren't physically real, but they're like horrific in the ways that they portray something that we perceive as like, oh, I can kind of piece together how that relates to the real world. And why the ending is like, yeah, a little silly, but still really great for the way that it ties up so many loose ends.
Yeah.
Especially the fact that in the beginning of the movie, he says like his wife gets taken away from him, is killed in a bombing, and she actually was put in a coma. And so later on, he's like, I just want one more minute with her. And then we get literally only one more minute. And that they literally keep pointing up to the NOMAD. It's like, we just need to get the kid to the NOMAD. And you're like, well, how the fuck would they even do that? And then they show up at fucking LAX and you're like, hell yeah, this is cool. So like the movie wraps itself up in ways that you have been beaten over the head with like setup. So when it happens, you're like, fuck yeah. It's not even like a weird thing. You're like, we're doing it. We're doing it, man. I love this.
This is a testament to the setup, right?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of little things. There's like a lot of like going through checkpoints, getting onto a vehicle, going to a place, doing a lot of things that like, if you hadn't been paying attention all movie, they felt very unearned. It was like, how did you do this? How did you get here? Why did we suddenly have this? But every single part of the NOMAD, like from the moment they break him out of jail and they say like, oh, standby mode to show that he hadn't actually killed the kid.
Yeah.
And then they go through the like checkpoint, they get onto the vehicle, they get up to the thing. They use a very simple detonator on the NOMAD. Like every one of those things has been set up throughout the movie up until then. They go through a checkpoint earlier in the movie where the kid uses his little AI powers to help them get through the checkpoint. They have these detonators. They have these different behaviors. They have these different tricks that they've set up throughout the film. So it feels earned, even though it feels rushed.
Yeah, and even he's like wearing this like hazmat suit when he's down in LA, and then he's wearing the same hazmat suit at the in the aftermath of the bombing at his house. That happened in the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
He's going there because there's nuclear fallout, and then at the very end, he puts it on because it's a lunar suit, and you know that like it looks the same. He probably knows how to use it. Like all of these elements work so well together because you've been primed so well, like you said, and. Yeah, the ending can be a little hokey, but man, it was cool as hell.
No, I think that was like the most satisfying, like, spoilers. Everyone except for the Alfie, the robot AI weapon, dies. But like what I want to say was this movie gets so much mileage out of killing the mom.
Yeah, my God.
So in the beginning of the movie, the mom dies because she's trying to flee. And it's like a tragedy.
Yeah.
And then in the middle of the movie, we find out the mom didn't die. She's just in a coma.
Which was a great thing for the robots to be like, we can't kill the creator. So we need a human to come here. We don't trust any humans, though.
Yeah, it's almost like what would possibly justify bringing Joshua to this place? It's like, this actually is a nice setup of like, the machines are very, like, because that's the other thing is like, a lot of cyberpunk, when they look at like this Ghost in the Shell, like machines with personality thing, it's very Buddhist.
Yeah.
And so the fact that like you have a Buddhist temple in Nepal looks like that is like narratively perfect. And having him come and like kill her as a moment of like release and catharsis for both, like he basically just unplugs her life support.
Yeah.
But like it's also like a sad moment for the kid. Like now the kid is also grieving the loss of her mother.
Yeah.
And Joshua's grieving the loss of his wife. And in this moment, if you didn't see it before, you see how they are finally bonded now in this moment of grief and trauma. And then at the very end of the movie, because they saved the like copy of the mom's brain that they were going to, the bad guys were going to torture, but like now they've saved it. For some reason, I'm sure there's a number of reasons, they have like her likeness has been donated. So they had like a bunch of machines up on the NOMAD. Now you have this moment where it's like Joshua can't escape with the kid because of like just a number of things. So the kid escapes and like he feels like at least my life had purpose and like this thing that my wife and I created together will live on, and it's like a symbol of like my coming to God moment on like AI is actually fine and maybe people are the problem. Through that, he has like his brief like, I don't know if heaven's a real thing, because they bring up heaven multiple times throughout the movie, but to give him this idea that like he has come to a place of peace and closure, they let him see his wife one last time. And so this time he gets to die with his wife instead of having to watch her go.
Yeah, even though he's half robotic, you know, and amazing visual
that's the other
language.
Great thing. Like he is literally missing 2 limbs, but because his brain isn't robotic, he is not a machine in the way that people would be persecuting him.
Yeah.
But at the same time, all the machines are more human than a lot of the machines, but because their brains are machines, they are not treated with the same level of respect and dignity.
Yeah. And just like you said, the fact that like his wife comes back to him as a robot makes sense that like he wouldn't have accepted that in the moment 5 years ago. He would have like been like, oh, this is gross.
He probably wouldn't even accepted it when she was like when he was turning off the life support.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But the fact that he's come around and like the kid has helped him like understand all of this, and that he sacrifices himself for the kid, and they create this perfect moment of like he has come full circle, his arc is complete, and now the reward that he and his wife get of the moment together finally is perfect because he's grown so much and it all makes sense. And he's like, I was so goddamn wrong. This sucks. I'm an idiot. It's great. It's so good. Like, and for a movie to do that really takes a lot of time and effort, and they did it. And it's earned, and it's great. And one more design element I wanted to mention is we talked about that spider that was at where the escape pods are.
Yeah.
And in my head, I'm like, this is a silly boss. But then at the same time, in my head, I was also thinking like, well, if you did have a bunch of like escape pods and you need to fix one remotely, you might just have some like arms that would help it out. So even the small thing of them having a mini boss before the end, or like the big bad, makes sense in universe. Like they spent so much time and effort on these really cool moments that if you think about it, makes some sense. You can he can make it work. And that's what I love about this movie, is how much of it does make actual logistic sense in universe. That has the verisimilitude, to use a big 50-cent word.
I don't know what that means.
It means it work in the universe.
Oh, that's what it means.
Yeah.
It's a metaphor. It's a secret.
Yes, I love this movie very much. I think it was perfectly made for, you know what? If I had to say it, I think it was made for both of us.
I was going to say that.
Fuck. Okay, I'm
Damn.
sorry. Here, no, you say it. I'll cut this.
No, I don't want it. No, you keep that shit in.
Wow, no, you have it.
Oh,
See,
no, I used the second cuss.
But yeah, thank you all for watching. I hope you guys give this a shot, because my God, so interesting to me, again, to read the comments, to be like people pointing out what they thought were like plot holes that really weren't that big of a deal, or really weren't plot holes. But at the end of the day, we're like, they still were just like, I fucking loved it though. It was great. Like, this is so good. And even the minor nitpicks that they had seemed like they were just like racking their brain to be like, well, what could I mention right now?
How can I be a contrarian?
Exactly. So yeah, I highly recommend this movie. What do you think, Cameron? What do you think, everybody? You think people should see this gosh dang movie?
I think creator, I barely know her.